I can see your screen now, and it's in the presenting mode. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is the second page. Okay, right?
Thank you.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
it's
thank you.
correct. Thank you.
Sorry for yeah, and okay, and the first part I would like to introduce the multi-temporal spatial scale remote sensing of the urban thermal environment. I would like to introduce to you the introduction of the urban thermal environment and the land surface temperature retrieval briefly. And then to introduce to you the retrieval of the major built-up areas. Then there are several scales. For example, the city scales thermal environment, and the inner, the city, the urban inner scale thermal environment, and the urban agglomeration scale thermal environment. And at last, something like it. Now it's very hot, not only in China's cities, but also in the other countries. For example, in Europe, in Africa, there is very serious the hot phenomenon. We can say that the urban fever is one of the most important urban diseases in the world. And now there are very serious thermal pollution. And we call it the Earth has a fever. Not only this year, but several years ago. Perhaps in the future, the fever phenomenon will become popular. It will last a long period. And China's temperature, the city's temperature is rising fast also than the global average, and is expected to see more hot days in the future. Taking into account increased human adaptive capacity, it's estimated that 32.1 heat-related deaths per 1 million citizens per year will occur between 1986 and 2005. It's also a very serious urban disease, as I mentioned yesterday. And point 5 centigrade increase in global warming would cause so many deaths a year in Chinese cities. Okay, and the land surface temperature as one of the important environmental monitoring indicator parameter reflecting the urban thermal environment plays a very important role in describing the interaction between the land surface characteristics and the atmosphere within a certain range, reflecting the global climate change and the energy exchange. Okay. And this is the land cover. I will mention introduce it, the anthropogenic heat emission and the land surface temperature increasing. Okay, and urban fever, the city's fevers reason, there are many reasons. For example, the sun's radiation, the landscape patterns, and the land cover, the population density, and even some socio-economic factors. For example, the urban breeze intensity. Urban breeze, for example, the buildings, periods, and something like it. Okay, so because of the numerous influencing factors and very complex action mechanism, it is of great significance to explore its influencing mechanism. It's very complex, but very valuable and interesting. So we said the city is feverish, so we should test the city's temperature. So we use the thermometer of the city, the infrared remote sensing, to check the city. Okay, and then because so many influencing factors, so we should study the interaction affecting mechanism, and to know what's the reason, what's the main factors to impact. I have introduced the urban green yesterday, and the urban green has interaction and influence the urban heat. Also the urban green, the urban road, urban buildings, and the urban impervious surface, and to interact, to affect the urban heat. So we sum up two questions. What are the symptoms of the city? Aiming at the problems to be summarized in the spatial temporal pattern characteristics of the multi-scales and land surface temperature, and based on the multi-source and multi-temporal remote sensing infrared data, we studied the urban agglomeration and some city scale, the city polar centricity scale, the function area scale, and the continuous spatial scale monitoring system of the industrial zone analysis, the spatial temporal evolution characteristics of the LST, and the specific major events, and to try to reveal the spatial temporal pattern characteristics of the land surface temperature in the process of urbanization in China or in some other countries. You just like it. If a baby catch a cold, he is furious. He go to the hospital first to check the temperature and how does it change. And then the second, how to diagnose. Then it's just to say we should study the land surface temperature driving force analysis, and we should study the urban green, and urban humidity, and the social economic factors. How do they affect the urban thermal environment, and use some statistics method. Okay, and what's the cause? What's the cause? What about the reason? Let's compare the dominant factors that affect the surface temperature, and to sequence rank the influencing factors to evaluate the impact of the different influence factors on the urban heat island or the urban surface temperature. So we just to say how to extract the main urban build-up area scientifically, and how to combine the temporal and spectral organically to discover the spatial temporal evolution of the urban heat island, how to analyze the effect of the spatial pattern of the several factors, multi-factors, including the impervious surface on the heat island effect. So we just conduct the comprehensive and in-depth research from the urban area scale, the inner city scale, and the function area scale, and combine the temporal characteristics and spatial distribution pattern of the urban heat island effect, analyze the characteristics of the daily and seasonal and the annual phases of the urban heat island, and try to construct a systematic and complete urban heat island effect monitoring procedures and classification method, and conduct the quantitative analysis of the effect of the spatial distribution of the several multi-factors on the urban heat island, and perhaps in the future we will predict the distribution and development trend of the urban heat island. Now we are conducting such research. I hope, I'm sure this year or next year we will have more achievements. First, we should retrieve the land surface temperature, and there are several methods. For example, some retrieve the land surface temperature based on the radiative transfer equation model, and there are the advantage and disadvantage of the common method. For example, the method of radiative transfer equation and the principle of the atmosphere radiative transfer and the parameters are difficult to determine and complicated. And there are the single window, single channel, and multi-channel split window algorithm and something like it. I think there are many methods to retrieve the leaf area, the land surface temperature, and we selected to retrieve the LST based on the radiation transfer equation method. And this is some technical routine. First, to calculate the atmosphere parameters with motion based on some of the atmospheric radiation transmission pattern, and then calculate the TOA, and the vegetation coverage, and mask the water bodies, and calculate the surface emissivity, and then retrieve the land surface temperature. That yesterday, there is a big conference on the land, the infrared remote sensing in Kunming, and then after retrieving the land surface temperature, if we study the urban heat island, we have to retrieve the urban major build-up area first. So there are many methods to retrieve it. Now here I would like to introduce one method. Okay, the question is how to improve the main build-up area retrieving accuracy, and there are some methods. For example, the classification of the surface cover types, and use the neural network I have mentioned yesterday in the urban green space remote sensing, and makes the spectral decomposition. Also, someone use the nightlight data DMSP and VIIRS and something like it, the threshold method, also some band index method, and also they have some disadvantage, the low classification accuracy and some complex models. And then we developed a method, we called it the retrieving the urban built-up area based on the impervious surface coherent density and CCA cluster algorithm. The CCA is the city clustering algorithm used land cover for extracting the urban area boundary rather than demographic data and administrative definition. And the disadvantages include it cannot distinguish the connected components of the impervious surface overlying between the urban and the suburban area, cannot distinguish the sparse circumstance of the impervious surface. And so we replace the impervious surface coverage area with the impervious surface coherent area, including the procedures, including the impervious surface information retrieval. Then we use the distance-weighted impervious surface coherent density, then retrieve the main urban build-up area based on the city clustering algorithm. First, we use the the BCI based on the BCI, which is the Biophysical Composition Index. It's a urban environment index that can distinguish the urban features based on VIS model. VIS that the vegetation, the impervious, the soil, and the procedures like it, the water mask, and the cap transformation, and then calculate the BCI index. The BCI, yes, there is a description here, and then use the threshold method retrieval. Select the appropriate thresholds to extract the high albedo and the low albedo impervious surface. Then we get the distribution of the urban build-up area. Then we get the result, the impervious surface information retrieval based on the BCI that like it, okay? The Beijing impervious surface, and conduct some validation. Then we get the impervious surface of Beijing is centered on the east and west district and gradually spread outward. It's mainly distributed in some districts, okay, and we can know it. We can study especially on the impervious surface in the urban grid and studied the impervious surface coverage and the changing and the evolution speeds and so on. And then we get it, the impervious surface coherent density. How to calculate it? The impervious surface coherent density of a pixel point, okay, just like it, describe the degree of the clustering and distribution density of the impervious surface within a certain radius around the pixel, just like it, okay? And for the impervious surface distribution map, the distance weighted algorithm is used to calculate the average value of the impervious surface in the radius R with the pixel S as the center as the density of the impervious surface of the pixel. This is the equation, okay? And there are some, this is BSI and the R, the different radius, and this is the pixel, and to S, then to calculate this pixel's density, just like it, and just like it. Okay, then we get the different radius, okay, the impervious surface cohesion density. You see the inner ring, the impervious surface cohesion density in the east and west urban area, just like it, and the central, the Haidian, Shijingshan, Fengtai district, and Chaoyang district are the Beijing's development, where the Beijing's development is more concentrated. So the impervious surface cohesion reached more than 25%. After Ring, it's the developing area. So the impervious surface density is a little lower, from 10 to 25%. Then we can get the civil, okay, the urban boundary, the classification definitely the low density is the urban construction clustering, just like it, the medium, the high density gathering area, the density is very high. We use the CCA cluster algorithm to determine the range of the connected area for the different categories, and the distance threshold L equal to the 200 meter, and the algorithm threshold is decided, and then the identification of the urban boundary, and just like it. So, and then we carry out some validation to compare with the distribution of the downtown Beijing, and it's acceptable. After the retrieving of the major build-up area, then we come to begin to study the urban scale, the city scale, urban heat island, to study the characteristics. Then I will introduce the research status and the spatial temporal evolution of the urban heat island intensity with the case of the Beijing, and to study the impact of the impervious surface on the urban heat island intensity. You know, in the past, the method of the retrieving the suburb range in the calculation of the heat island intensity isn't very good, and the administrative boundary cannot accurately describe the core area of the city development, which directly affect the accuracy and of the urban heat island intensity. So we developed a method of the major urban build-up area retrieving based on the impervious surface cohesion area. Then how to combine the temporal and spectral distribution sequence of the heat island to study it is how to fully combine the temporal and the spatial distribution of the heat island intensity and analyze the spatial and the temporal distribution. Yes. And the third, there are also some corresponding problems of the heat island intensity, the time sequence analysis method. So we, in combination with the long-term sequence remote sensing data, is particularly important to analyze the evolution and the distribution of the solar phase, the daily phase, and the seasonal and the annual of the urban heat island during the urbanization based on the different time scale. So let's see what's the change, what's the evolution of the urban heat island intensity with the case study of the Beijing. This is the urban heat island intensities calculation. First, we choose 150% area equivalent of the main urban construction surrounding as the boundary, just like it. This is the boundary. Okay, this is the main urban build-up area. This is the boundary, and the DT refer to the urban heat intensity, and the intensity can be calculated like the equation. And then we performing the statistics analysis and of some area. Okay, just like it. Then we can study the some change of the mean urban heat island intensity. For example, this is the monthly mean urban heat island intensity of Beijing at a different time. Okay, the 4 times. Okay, you see, this is the different time, and we can find some very interesting change. This is the evolution of the daily. Okay, the day of mean urban heat island intensity in Beijing. Okay, it's very evident from the January to March, and from the November to December, it's decreasing from the 130 to 1030, and increase. Okay, from the 1030 to 2230. On the contrary, from the April to October, it's increasing from the 130 to 1330, and decrease. Okay, from the 1330 to the next days 130. And this is the different season, the spring, summer, autumn, and winter. It can be directly seen that in spring and the summer and the autumn here, and the urban heat island intensity is increasing from 130 to 1330, and decrease. Okay, from this point to 2230, and has very great change in summer. Okay, this the highest point. Okay, instead, the consequence becomes greatly different in winter, where the urban heat island intensity is increasing from the 10:30 to 22:30 and decreased from here, okay, with the lowest value of the 0.6K, okay. And this is the also the 12 months change. This is the day, this is the night, okay. You can see from the graphic representation of the dt of the T boundary during the day show an anti-clockwise arrangement from the January to December and clockwise pattern at night. During the day, the month's urban heat island intensity fluctuates obviously between this period, and the distribution of the month's urban heat island intensity to be stable at night have the lowest value, okay, at 1.29 in October and highest in August. Okay, so we can find some very interesting result in the city of the urban heat island with the infrared remote sensing. I think it's very interesting. And this is the seasonal mean urban heat island intensity value of the day and night, along with its variation from several years. And this is also the seasonal mean urban heat island intensity value of day and night per year along its variation. You see, this is the several years change. And during the day, the Beijing urban heat island intensity is characteristics with the apparent seasonal variation. The greatest in summer, and the second in the spring and the autumn, and varies at night. The seasonal variation of the urban heat island intensity is relatively stable, very close each other, and with the value of 1 to 2K during these 12 years. Okay, this is also some change of the annual mean urban intensity value of the day and night. Okay, just like it. Yeah, you can see during the day of the 12 years, the mean UHI intensity value is 2.12K with like it. At night, it's like this. Okay, and well, during the night, the annual UHI intensity is basically stable. Okay, the value vary in from the 1.4K to 1.7K. Okay, reach its maximum value in 2011. Okay, and like it, we can find something interesting. And then we define the level of the urban heat island intensity of the pixel of the modest land surface temperature products into the ice year, years, months, and case days. And then this one refers to the land surface temperature, the mean boundary area temperature, and the mean urban heat island intensity in the point. And then we have the different level, 5 levels, and to perform the statistic analysis of the frequency of the different urban heat island intensity levels in the 4 seasons. Then we study it. You can see very interesting changing characteristics okay, shows during the day the different levels, the different seasons, and shows that during the day the spatial distribution of the urban heat island level appear to be on the level 2, level 3, and it appears that our level 2 heat island intensity value shows the highest frequency and 50% or more intensity in summer. Okay, in summer, so like it here. Okay, mainly concentrated in the central area. There is no obvious spatial pattern concerning the different urban heat island intensity level in the winter. Okay, here. So you can see from the outside, the daytime, from the outside to inner, it appeared like a ring. And also during the night, they also show increasing on the frequency of the urban heat island intensity from the outside the periphery to the center. Also, in the same reason, there is a loop, okay, like it, okay, the loop. And when approaching from the outside periphery to the center, the level 2 heat island intensity cycle will emerge. Okay, the level 4, okay, holds the highest frequency, while frequency of the level 5, okay, stays as around about 30%. Okay, this is the night appearance, just like the distribution of the downtown Beijing. Very interesting from the infrared remote sensing to check the change the urban heat island and with the appearance of the city. There are some very close relations. And we can also study the subheat island in Beijing. We can know the characteristics of the urban thermal environment are affected by the type of the urban underlying surface and its spatial structure, just like the city's appearance. And the urban heat island are not continuous. Inside the city, the subheat island and the subcold island coexist. And you can see during the daytime in Beijing, the heat island high incidence area is where it just like it. Okay. Then we developed the urban heat island intensity level expected value E. Okay, the E value is the day is linked with the impervious coherent density. And use the E, we can know what's the expected value of 1 pixel. Of course, it's original. We should study more profoundly, use some system such as the roof, and we might to study the different scales and predict the urban heat island. Okay. Also, we use the E. This is to study the characteristics of the spatial distribution of the expected value of the urban heat island grid, and this is the procedures we just use it to calculate the expected value of the urban heat island intensities level during the day and the night in the 4 seasons. Then, based on the E, the expected value distribution of the urban heat island intensity level and the aggregation density distribution of the impervious surface, And we choose 6 typical research areas with the high expected value of the heat element intensity level was selected. For example, this is the central Fengtai district and the Dongba and the six area. And then we study the correlation between the urban heat island effect and the impervious surface. Okay. Then this is the day, the 5 levels you see, and when the impervious surface gathering density, the coherent density is less 10%, the level 1 heat element has the highest intensity frequency. And then here, when it's over 30%, the second heat element, okay, intensity frequency tend to be stable, okay, tend to be stable, just like this. And here the heat element has the highest intensity frequency, okay, and just like this. When the coherent density of the impervious surface is greater than 60%, its influence on the heat element effect tends to be saturated. Okay. Also, this is the night, the different level, and there are some law. We can find some interesting things. The intensity of the different degrees of the heat element at night didn't change significantly with the coherent density of the impervious surface. Okay, the density. That's to say, the net heat element in the main urban build-up area of Beijing isn't significantly affected by the distribution of the impervious surface, but is affected by the urban population and so on. So we study the 6 area. For example, this is some one area, okay, and the area you can see here the coherent density of the impervious surface in the west second banner, the west third, okay, the area, the Huilongguan and Sijiqing Bridge area. On the north fourth ring, the roads are mainly between 10 to 30, with average the 26% and the 25% respectively. Okay, and also we can study the other areas and find some characteristics. Okay, this is some change. Okay, and also the other changes. So we can find it that the daytime, the secondary heat element intensity frequency, the level 3 is larger than the level 1 and is bigger than the level 4, and the grade 5 heat element intensity is the lowest. And we just to show you that we can study from this area, from the aspect, we can divide it into the different level of the urban heat element intensity and study the different seasons, the different the day and night, and what's the things affected them. Then the frequency of the different heat element intensity level is related to the coherent density of the impervious surface in the daytime and at night. and the variation characteristics of the heat element intensity is similar under the coherent density of the similar impervious surface. And we can study the very detailed impervious surface and heat element effect. That to say, by using it, and it can be seen that the average surface temperature of the major urban buildup in Beijing was in the order the summer is larger than spring, is larger than autumn, and larger than in the winter. Okay, this is the result. The spring, the summer, autumn, and winter, and we can see the different radius and the different season and the different radius and have the different styles, and the average surface temperature has a very good positive correlation with the coherent density of the impervious surface, and the correlation coefficient is about 96%, and the response degree of the average surface temperature to the coherent density of the impervious surface is very consistent, and the different radius and what's the characteristics, the radius. Okay, the radius equal to the 1,000 meters and is over 2,200 meters. What's the characteristics? We can also study it, and with the different radius, between the coherent density of the impervious surface and the average surface temperature in the 6 typical area, and we find the optical scale and the corresponding correlation coefficient are shown in the table. Then we can draw the conclusion. There are differences in the optical scale in the typical regions, and the seasonal changes have little influence on the optical scales, and the optical scale can measure the degree of fragmentation of the impervious surface distribution in the different regions, and the single degree of the surface type to some extent. Then we have introduced to you very detailed urban scale thermal environment. Now I would like to introduce to you the urban inner scale, which is also a term of mind, which can study the different scales. We can study the city scale, we can study the inner city scale, just like it. Here, I would like to introduce to you the spatial quantitative analysis of the potential driving factors of the LST in different centers of the polycentric cities, and how do the urban morphological blocks shape the spatial patterns of the LSTs over different seasons, and just like it. First, the polycentricity refers to the existence of the multiple central regions in the city, and the polycentric city are considered to be groups of the discrete similar regions separated by the open space, making the combination the post-connection effect exceeds the average level. For example, the main city, the city news district, also some industrial park, the different center. Okay. Then we use the Tianjin as a case study. It's a typical polycentric city, and to analyze the relationship between the urban morphology and the spatial pattern of the urban heat island, and try to reveal the impact of the natural and social economic factors on the LST in the different centers by geodetector model. This is the area, the Tianjin, okay. And the average surface temperature in the 3 city centers is very high and significant, has a significant heat island effect. And we retrieve the LST and calculate the heat island intensity with the equation, and we can study the okay. This is, you can see, this is the heat island intensity distribution map, the main city, okay, and the spatial distribution pattern of the urban heat island is relatively uniform, okay, and the proportion of the heat island area increased from the 10% from the 2013 to 2018, and the areas with high heat island intensity are mainly distributed in the commercial and the high density residential area, okay, and the non-heat island area is mainly located in the river, Haihe River basin and the Ziya River basin, and the large-scale parks in the southeast. And this is the new district. Yes, and you can see the spatial distribution of the UHI intensity is unbalanced in the east and west answers. Okay, I say the high intensity UHI area are concentrated in the central business district and the southeast harbor ecozone and Jalakit. This is the industrial park. You see, very hot, and the distribution of the high intensity area is stable and concentrated, and the industrial production area are separately by the green belt with very clear boundary. You see here, okay. And the thermal radiation generated by industrial activities is difficult to dissipate in a short time, just like it. Okay. Then we select the potential drivers, and we select the urban grid, and the urban grid, and urban heat, urban humidity, urban whiteness, and social economic. This is the some parameters index. For example, the NDVI, the vegetation coverage, NDBI, the building density, impervious surface, cohesion density, NDWI, and net light intensity, and so on. You can see that this is the green layer factor selection. Okay, these 3 parameters, and also the NDVI, to how to retrieve it, I have introduced to you the urban green space remote sensing, just like it. This is the urban grid, impervious layer factor selector, and the NDBI, IBI, okay, and also the humidity, the NDWI, also the TCW, and the water density, okay. And this is the social economic factors the night light intensity, the road density, the railway density, like it. Okay, and then we selected all these potential driving factors, and then we use the urban grid, the surface and the cover cap characteristics, and the covering the natural and social economic factors. A total 11 potential LST drivers were selected. Then we used geographic detector model. This is the common statistical method, and this is the geographic detector model. Okay, and to compare them each other, and we see that most of the common statistical method has some limitation. For example, the linear assumption, the requirement for the correlation between the variables is difficult to measure the driving effect of the superposition of two variables, and we choose the factor detector and the interaction detector to be used in our studies. They can effectively avoid the limitation of about the statistical method. So we used this is some of the PDSSW, and you can read a study from Professor Wang Jinfeng's some papers, and to study the geographic detectors, and there are some detailed things. And then we study it and the sorting of the LST's driver in Tianjin. You can see this is someone. The part of the reason is that the factor interpretation role of the greenness layer and the impervious, okay, layer is higher than the other factors. The impervious surface layer factors, IBI, has the highest interpretation rate of the LST, about this number, and respectively similar to the result in the other literature. And we try to analyze the reasons. Perhaps it's like the urban development that the main urban area tend to be saturated, and resulting almost no spatial differentiation in the luminous intensity, the light. Okay, and in this case, where the study area covers only urban area but not the suburbs, and the noctilucent daily light data isn't very difficult to show the spatial heterogeneity of the regional economic development. Okay, and this is in the new district in industrial parks, and the list, the sequence of the LST's sequence. You can see that the greenness factor and the humidity factor has a higher, okay, has a higher interpretation rate. Okay, the NDVI has the highest rate in the new district, followed by the NDVI and similar. NDVI has the largest interpretation rate in the industrial park. Okay, the like it. Okay, then follow this one. Okay, follow this one. Then we can try to analyze the reason. Perhaps it's that these two centers, the new district and the industrial parks, are located along the coastal and are spatial adjacent. Through them, although they differ greatly in land cover types and the regional functions. Everything is related to the other things, but the near things are more related to each other. Yeah. And also, we study the interaction detector. We selected the potential drivers and to study the interaction, use the interaction detectors, and somehow they have some the interaction types enhance each other, enhance non-linear, weaken, and so on. And we study it and selected the discretization scheme with the largest PD value, and to study it. The drivers are divided into 8 levels, and each level contains the same number of the elements, and study the interaction. For example, this is the Tianjin driver interaction. This is the interaction in the main district. You can see from the interaction between the greenness factors and the humidity factors is most significant in Tianjin, and the most significant interaction is the NDVI and the TCW, SAVI and TCW, and something like it. That is, from the relatively macro perspective, the whole city, the natural factors has a great impact on the LST, whereas in the main district, the interaction between the impervious factors and the greenness, okay, factors is the most prominent. Among them, the interaction between the IBI and the 3 green factors is over 36%, and the leading driving effect of the impervious factors and the result of the factor detector in the main city, okay, side. Also, we can study the in the new area and the industrial parks, there are some laws, okay. And then there are some things like it new. We can see under the background of the suburbanization, the large cities gradually evolved into the polycentric forms, and the combination of the polycentric theory and the remote sensing of the urban thermal environment. Then the comprehensive studies of the urban morphology and the urban heat island remote sensing monitoring on a relatively fine scale, and also have some instructions. Okay, we select the 20 sliced sub graphs of the heat island area to further detect the relationship between the leaf land surface temperature and the impervious surface ratio to the 3 urban centers. And it can be seen that in the sample size maps that the several industrial parks with the low proportion of the impervious surface and the average land surface temperature can be close to the sample area with a high proportion of the impervious surface in the other centers. Okay, and the thermal radiation source can reasonably explain the phenomenon. The solar radiation from the same remote sensing image has little difference between the three urban centers. Therefore, the possibility of the additional heat sources from the industrial activity is very high. In summary, it can be inferred that reducing the intensity of the industrial production activity is a very effective way to balance the thermal environment of the industrial parks. And I will introduce in the next part in the industrial factors of thermal pollution. And the most significant is planetary factors of the land surface temperature in the main urban area is impervious surface factors, followed by the greenness factors. Due to the scarcity of the land resources in the main urban area, it's very difficult to directly reduce the distribution of the urban buildings. Therefore, increasing the green coverage, urban green space, is a very effective way to mitigate, to alleviate the urban overheating. And the urban heat island surface at the west edge of the new district is low, and the urban development isn't saturated. Therefore, we can relocate some function unit to the new district to limit the proportion of the artificial ground, the urban green, the lake. So we can also find some find some suggestions, okay, in the industrial parks and so on. Then let's move to how we studied the city center. Then we moved to the more fine scale. How do the urban morphology blocks shape the spatial pattern of the land surface temperature over the different region? That is, there are some of the limitation of the fine scale urban thermal environment patterns research. For example, the urban zone system doesn't consider the multi-dimensional building geometry, and but it's very important. So the urban morphology block UMB consider the varied the 2-dimension and 3-dimension building geometries to evaluate the spatial patterns and the season variety. And also the spatial distribution map of the LSD in UMB over the different seasons. Okay, and then the studies significant, the major driving factors of LSD in different seasons, and combine the effects of the potential driving factors in the different seasons. And the average LSTs of UMBs within the central urban area shows similar spatial pattern across the different seasons, you see. And also the high level area are mainly distributed in main business district, industrial and public services, and considerable the cooling effect generated by large urban ecological paths and the water bodies you can see. And this very hot, the cool, and so on. And we study it more finer and finer. And this is the 17 selected LSTs, the driving factors. You see, and also from the architectural morphology factors, and not only the dimension, but also the height of the buildings, the ratio of the buildings coverage area to the total blocks area, and the NDVI, NDVI, also the land use and land cover, and the function proportion, the density of the urban functions, and the mixed density of the urban functions, and the distance of the nearest green land, and so on. You can see, and we have published the paper in the some journal, international journal, and we can get the significant driving factors of the LST in the different season. This is the detection of the relative contribution of the potential. You can see the dominant driving factors of LST varied across the seasons, and the difference being pronounced in the winter, and the factors characterizing the surface components displaying more of the LST and the high temperature conditions. A great contribution of the architecture morphology during the cold conditions. Yes, just like it. This is the relative importance of the driving effect of LST from the different hierarchies. You can see from this picture that the higher the temperature, the more influencing factors of the PD value, and the relative contribution of the 17th potential driving factors. And and the interpretation level of the effectors is also relatively high. On the contrary, the driving mechanism in the winter is more complex, and more factors jointly determine the spatial variation. And also the architecture morphology, the surface specifical and the function properties, and the surface physical parameter, and the land cover has very strong influence on the land surface temperature. Whereas the function property factors has the lowest explanation rate for the LST's variation. And also we studied the interaction, the enhanced explanation of the seasons, LSTs, and so on, and the command driving effect of NDVI with other factors was relatively weak in winter, and which indicate that low temperature significantly weakened the ability of the vegetation to regulate the temperature. Then we can know how to mitigate the urban heat island based on the study of the driving factors and the major driving factors. Just like it. Then, according to the spatial pattern of the LST and its driving characteristics over the different season, we proposed to paying attention to designing the matrix with a view toward a block scale adaptive landscape, and the high-rise, low-density building helps slow the temperature rise due to the particularity of the building function. In the industrial area, the cooling effect can be achieved by adding blue and green space, just connected with the last lecture, the urban green space, and the results may vary at the different observation scales, the locations, and the seasons. So we study from the different scales, different locations, and study the seasonal response. And that's some thing from the city scale and the city inner scale, and let's move to the urban agglomeration scale. Yes, the largest. You see, the urban agglomeration is the gathering place of the commerce, some talents, the information and technology in the region and the country. It's the main source of the reform, and it's a very important geographic unit for the countries around the world to participate in the global competition. And the advanced spatial organization form as a material stage. You see, the urban agglomeration is an inevitable trend in the process of the urban development and expansion. And so, probing studying the impact mechanism of the surface temperature in the scale of the urban agglomeration is very important and essential. So we studied try to explore the spatial identification method of the heat island suitable for this scale. And also we consider the topographical, land surface, and the social economic factors, and combined with the characteristics of the urbanization rate of the different city, the spatial differentiation law of the impact intensity is studied, and try to explore the ways of the comprehensive study, the independent influence of the factors and the interaction also. So we study the spatial and also the temporal characteristics of the heat island in the typical urban agglomeration of China, and also the spatial quantitative analysis of the multi-factors action of the surface temperature in this scale, and the differentiation of the contribution rate of the also the influence factors, just to study how did it change, how what's the reason, what's the influencing factors under such a scale, and then the spatial and the temporal difference of the surface temperature influencing factors among the typical urban area. We choose the study area. We choose the four. The Yangtze River Delta urban agglomeration, and the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei urban agglomeration, and the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau urban agglomeration, and the Chengdu, Chongqing urban agglomeration. And there are 63 cities in total. Okay, and this is the land surface temperature distribution. Okay, you see, this is just use it. Okay, and based on the product, we obtained the annual average land surface temperature and the day and night from this period, and the distribution of the island, like distribution of the high in the middle and low in the surrounding. Okay, then we have put forward a hotspot identification. First, we conduct the land surface temperature grading. Then we use the Gaussian surface fitting and to use the radius method, and we conduct the hotspot analysis. The hotspot analysis doesn't require the result of the urban and the rural regional division, nor is affected by the limitation of the polar-centric morphology and the human intervention. Only rely on the spatial aggregation, distribution mode, and the surface temperature value. It can find the spatial clustering and the high, that like the hot spots and the low value, the cold spots with the statistic significance in the study area. So we can decide the extent of the heat island area of the urban agglomeration. Okay, this is we use the different years and the pattern and the Moran index indicate, okay, that the overall distribution of the LST in the peer review data has aggregation distribution characteristics. This we use the hotspot analysis. We obtain the detailed distribution pattern of the LST by locating the high value. Okay, you see high value aggregation area. Calculate the JTIS or the G index and get a Z score, and according to the significance of the Z, and this is the criterion and was used to determine the high temperature centrated area. That is the hot spot space, and the results show that the high temperature gathering here in the peer review data region. Okay, and most of them distributed on the both sides of the peer review estuary, whether during the day and night. Okay. And by comparing the spatial of the heat island in the 2005 and 2015, three-change model of the heat island space in the area are obtained. The spatial stable and the reduced and expected, the like it. Then this is the stable area. This is the reduced area. This is the expanded area. Then there are very obvious north-south difference in the expansion and the reducing of the heat island space in the PRD area. And the heat island space as a whole shows the development trend of the convergence and expansion towards the central region, and combined with the spatial evolution trend of the heat island and the concept of the integrated development of the urban agglomeration, the spatial growth points of the heat island may appear in the border area of the such as here, the Zhongqing and Huizhou, and so on. Also, which are divided into the different level. Okay, the proportion of them in the different cities vary greatly, and there are also largely difference in the composition of the spatial hierarchy of the heat element in the different city. Okay, we can study it. And in the same city, there is also cases where the proportion of the area and the hierarchical structure change oppositely. Okay, and the differentiation characteristics of the thermal environment of the urban agglomeration cannot be fully characterized from the single dimension alone. And also, we consider use the hotspot ratio index, which is proposed to quantitatively analyze the degree of the spatial differentiation of the heat element in the urban agglomeration. This is the equation. Okay, it considered two dimensions of the area proportion and the land surface level. Okay, the different level. So we can use it. Okay, okay, and the city with the high urbanization rate generate a very high heat rate index value. Okay, heat ratio index with the Dongguan and Shenzhen here very highest, and Dongguan is a typical industrial city. Shenzhen is a coastal city with a large port with dense transformation. Also, we can study the other cities, Zhaoqing, Huizhou, and Jiangmen, and Zhuhai, and has the lowest. We can study it also. Then we have finished. Then we move to the spatial quantitatively analysis of the multi-factor action. What influence the surface length in the urban agglomeration? So we also use the multi-factors. Okay, also the several factors, and we also use the GI detector and with the the factor detector to study it. Okay, and you can see the land surface factors, the social economic factors are highly correlated with the land surface temperature in the central city. Okay, the Dongguan, Shenzhen, and Zhongshan, and the impact, okay, in the margin city, such as this area, the Jiangmen, Zhaoqing is weak and even not significant. Then the influence of the land surface and the social economic factors on the daytime land surface temperature show the spatial change law of the strong in the middle city and weak in the surrounding cities. Okay, and the reason, the limitation of the natural topographic factors, the urbanization process is concentrated in the central region of the Pearl River Delta, which in turn causes the spatial differences of the different types of the dominant driving factors. Okay, also we study the interactor detectors, the different cities, and the result of the dominant drivers of the interaction detector and the factor detector are consistent. Then what's the difference of the contribution rate of the influencing factors? We also have the sampling urban green, urban gray, and urban humidity. Also use social economic. We study it. Okay, here we use the boost regression trees. Okay, and the decision trees and the boosting, and using the urban gray, urban green, urban whiteness, social also multi-factors, and we study the different areas. Here you can see the Yangtze River's delta. Okay, the spatial distribution of the high temperature area were different in the different years, and the high temperature area, okay, were basically located, okay, in the counties, towns, and the dense populated area. From the 2000 to 2015, the LST in Shanghai showed a trend of rising, first, then decreasing, and finally rising. And the low temperature in 2010 may be related to the Shanghai World Expo held in the 2010. And also we can study the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, and to find some things. The provincial capital city of the Guangdong, of the south coastal cities of Shenzhen, Zhuhai, and other cities have always maintained very high LST, and in contrast, the low temperature area of the northern inland city has shown a gradual expansion trend. Also, we can see the Chengdu, Chongqing's characteristics, and we can study the temporal trend of the land surface temperature from the different years. The rising and change of the LST in the Yangtze River Delta urban agglomeration mainly migrated from the northwest with Shanghai as the center, while the south and the east, part show a greater degree of the cooling trend. In addition, the LST in the northern section of the Yangtze River has increased significantly. Also may be related to the establishment of the high-tech park in Nanjing in 2001. And also, this is the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei's urban agglomeration increased significantly in the southwest and east. And you can see, here from this area, the Beijing and its surrounding city, Tangshan and Qinhuangdao didn't increase, but decreased. But in the south city, such as Hengshui, Xintai, and Shijiazhuang increased. And we can also analyze the other periods, the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau's. Like it. Where is high, where is the low, like it. And then we studied the contribution rate of the impact factors also in the different cities. Yes, and the impervious urban green, and some of the multi factors. You can see from the city from the different year. And we can draw some conclusions. The greenest factors, NDVI in Ningbo, Ma'anshan, and Wuhu, the contribution rate of the vegetation to the land, land surface increased, and indicating the influence of the vegetation on the land surface temperature increased from the 2000 to 2005. On the contrary, the contribution rate of the Anqing, Anqing here, city, the Changzhou city, and Suzhou city all decreased. And also, we can study the urban grayscale factors, the ISA, the DM, the slope, and we can also find some revolution changing characteristics. And also we can study the humidity factors and so on, the social economic factors, the net light index, the GDP, population, and road density. And then we can compare them together. We can say the contribution rate of the natural factors is far lower than that of the social economic factors, and it's very different in the different cities. And Beijing, Tianjin are better than other cities in respect of the social economic, and their contribution rate are much higher than those of the 11 cities in Hebei province, and this result is consistent with the China's long-term urban development pattern. And the last, we can see the spatial and the temporal differentiation of the land surface temperature influencing factors among the typical urban agglomeration. You can see the different parameters in the different area. Okay, different urban agglomerations, the change, the erosion. For example, the Yangtze River Delta, the NDVI change. Okay, and the improved service. Okay, the trend, the changing trend. First decrease, then slightly, then increase, and finally decreased. Okay, the DEM increased slightly first, and then decrease, and finally rise. Okay, and the slope may be due to the difference in the surface solar radiation in each direction. Also, the wetness, the water density, and the road density, and so on, was the change characteristics. Okay, you can see. And also, the water density and the population density has a great impact on the land surface temperature, ranking very high, and with the passage of the time, the impact of the GDP development on the surface temperature has been decreasing year by year, while the impact of the roadway density and the water density has gradually increased. Okay, just like it. Okay, and the changing trend of the impact factor of the urban agglomeration, the different agglomeration. Yes, and we can find the comparatively effect. The green factors, the threshold point also be found in the Yangtze River. Okay, is here, is greater in Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei. Okay, and this is a threshold point, and indicating in the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei urban agglomeration, the lower in the VI can have an impact on the LSD. That is, the VI index causes the LST changed to be more sensitive. And the gray factors, water density, and the social economic factors was the threshold. We can study it profoundly, and I think we should lay on the foundation for the mitigation of the urban heat island and what's the changing trend. Okay, that's the first part. Okay, let's have about 10 minutes break. Let's return at the 10:15 Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Meng.
Okay.
Okay. Now, thank you.
Oh, sorry. There is also something I can.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
First page.
Okay. Let's begin the second part. Okay. I have finished the multi-temporal spectral remote sensing of the urban thermal environment. I think it's very complex and a lot of content from the city scale, from the city inner scale, from the urban agglomeration scale. And I introduced to you several methods, for example, how to analyze the spatial temporal evolution law, and how to analyze the disease reason, the cause I cited, just like what's the major affecting factors and how they affect the land surface temperature or urban heat element, and just like it. Just like how to know what's the disease, the fever is the people's temperature change, and what's the reason. It's because of the headache or the other stomach and caused fever, just like it. Okay, then let's move on to the second part, the infrared remote sensing monitoring of the industrial thermal pollution. It's very interesting. I think I will introduce from these several parts. First, I would introduce the industrial thermal pollution. You know, in the daily environment monitoring of the industrial thermal pollution, there are often problems such as inconvenient monitoring or the inaccurate the regional assessment. Therefore, it's very of very great significance to effectively monitor and evaluate the industrial thermal pollution by using the remote sensing technology, and not only in the urban scale but also in the even the factory scale, to monitoring the thermal environment monitoring is very, very important. And we are facing the many industrial heating pollution problems and the urban need of our country. You know, our country put forward the strategy to monitoring the decreasing production of the factories several years ago. And Premier Li Keqiang also put forward that use the remote sensing technology to monitoring the situation. Then we are thinking how to accurately determine the range of the thermal anomalies, how to effectively extract the industrial heat polluted areas, how to monitor the working situation or working status of the factories, if it's working or decreases the production or not working. So we carry out some studies. This is the research content. For example, we use the different kind of the data. No matter what kind of data we get, we just use it. Of course, we use the thermal infrared remote sensing data, landside models, and so on. The GF number 4 and thing 5 and so on. The multi-spectral remote sensing data, the GF number 1, number 2, ZY3, and so on. Also the Baidu, Google Earth images, also some high resolution or middle resolution thermal infrared images, also some ground-based observation images. And we conduct some data processing and retrieve the land surface temperature. And we use the multi-source remote sensing retrieving technology for the steel mills and the ground steel, the illegal factories, workshops. Okay, and also we should study the imaging feature area, the affected boundary with the remote sensing retrieving technology, and we study the plants or factories, working conditions, working status, working intensity detection technology. It's working or not, or the intensity of the working for the other production. Then we conduct some validation. We use so many data as possible as we can get. Okay, this is the thermal infrared data and the remote sensing ZY3 data and so on. This is the data. Okay. Then I have introduced the land surface temperature retrieving technique. It's not the importance of today's lecture. I think also there are some the geometric correction technique, the radiometric correction technique, and some things LSD's retrieving technique. I would like to use too much time to introduce them, the single window and the split window and so on. Then we get the land surface temperature. Last part, I have introduced to you the land surface temperature using in the city, urban heat island intensity monitoring. Okay, and now we use it to monitor the factories and the plants. You see, we get the land surface temperature. First, there are some area is the normal temperature. Whereas we are more interested in the abnormal area of the high temperature. The normal temperature area, we call it the background. And our focus on how to retrieve the abnormal area of the high temperature. After it, we should retrieve the, perhaps even though it's the high temperature area, but perhaps it's the factories or the plants. Also, perhaps it's the commercial area, also high density residence area. We should know the step forward. We should retrieve the industrial heat polluted area. After them, we should know what's the working conditions, what's the working intensities, and then I will give you some application cases. It's very interesting. It's a user, it's application. And I will also introduce the spatial temporal modeling of the industrial heat island effect. Then I will give you another very interesting cases. After the factories moving to other area, what happened? Okay, first, okay, we should study, introduce the retrieving technology for the high temperature abnormal area. First, we should from the large large area. For example, China or in some urban agglomeration. Okay, from the large scale to the middle scale, then to the final scale. Then I first introduce the scale of the urban agglomeration. even the whole China. Okay, and which is a large-scale thermal anomalous extraction method used virs and so on. And then we will introduce the urban interior scales, introduce some method. Okay. First, we should, I have introduced to you, we want to retrieve the high temperature abnormal area. So we should retrieve the background. Okay, so we use the models or Landsat and so on. We should to try to delete, eliminate the noise. Okay, this is some procedures. Okay, and something area. Try to retrieve the background area and try to then we can get the abnormal high temperature area. This is the area. Also, we know perhaps in the infrared remote sensing, sometimes we have the high resolution, but the low high spatial resolution, but the low temporal resolution. Sometimes we have the high temporal resolution, for example, the MODIS, and but the spatial resolution is very poor. So we should conduct the studies on the spatial temporal Fusion models and try to get the high resolution, spatial resolution, and the high temporal resolution. And there are many professors in China to study it. Also, in my own research group, we study it. We hope to improve the spatial and temporal resolution. And then we can develop, try to get the high spatial temporal land surface temperature data set based on the Fusion models. Of course, there are several the Fusion models, and if you are interested, you can read more papers. I think there are very several famous professors whose research group on it. And this is some data processing and some construction of the quantitative indicators and analysis of the status. Okay, and just like it, I will also introduce the little detail. This is the use the land surface temperature distribution map and calculate the heat and the intensity and the different level I have introduced in the former part, and try to get the high temperature zone in the, especially in the plant area, and to analyze the dynamic change of the multi-temporal and the of the land surface temperature. And we can also develop some more correlation analysis between the production and the surface temperature intensity. Okay, this part we use the data. Okay, the thermal anomaly. Okay, this is use the some okay. VNF and some data currently the following data source. Okay, yeah, VNP and the resolution and the satellite and the time and something noting, and you can read it later on. And there are some studies. Okay, some papers you can read it. And some Professor Liu Yongxue developed very good research in the field. He based on the various Netfair products, and based on his model, we developer conduct our works. He identifies the industrial heat source using the time series of the various Netfair product with objective oriented method. Okay, also the others. Okay, this is someone to publish some papers you can check. Also, this is the data source, the various Netfair, the resolution, the land cover, and the statistics data of the various cities, and the 3 versions of the various Netfair algorithm have been developed since 2012, and the Liqit. This is the Netfair data processing, and the data downloaded by the website. Here is the CSV format, and you can use the Python and something like it to convert the format. And this is the procedures, and this is a research routine. Construct the heat source object from the VNF vector. Data can be regarded as a data clustering process based on the spatial information based on the object-oriented analysis method of the spatial space temperature dimension. And this study uses the ArcGIS software to segment the industrial objects, and the specific method is to count the number of the VNF falling in each 250 meter plus 250 meter fishing night, and then to extract the industrial heat source after the combination and the dispersion. And in combination with high resolution images, provide the Google or Baidu the corresponding categories of the industrial heat sources can be decided. And then we can develop the industrial heat source sampling database. Okay, this is the research. Okay, the steel mill, the cooking plant, and the cement plant, and to calculate the high dimensional temperature measurement, the temperature similarity of the heat source is used to distinguish the different type of the industrial heat source in order to describe the detail of the temperature characteristics of the net heat source object, and a set of the high spatial interval measures, okay, was used in the study to count the temperature histogram and of the night heat source object, then normalized to the probability, and the container size for the temperature is 10K between here. Okay, the results Netfair nighttime heat source, okay, is then treated as a separate entity in the following sampling generation, classification, and validation. And then, according to the software, the curve analysis of the above temperature histogram shows that the 3 typical Gaussian curves like it, okay, the peak and the something like it, and also the 3 candle of the plants And also the temperature of the sub-pixel heat source is affected by a number of factors. Variation ranging from the full composition and the combustion efficiency, the changes in underlying the surface and atmosphere conditions during imaging, and the deviation in the sensor feeds, and that you can see it. And the stratified random sampling method is used to generate the various temperature templates. And in the training, training data, 50% of the net fair heat source objects of each subclass in the sampling database are randomly selected, and their temperature probability distribution is averaged into the template according to the category you can see, and the different kind of plants, the other plants, and the total number, and and then the Euclid distance between the undermanned heat source object and each template is calculated, and the category with the minimum distance is selected as the output category of the object. At the same time, the process of the generating temperature template according to the stratified random sampling and the minimum distance classification requires the 100 repeats, and the final category of each net heat source object is determined according to the maximum number of the volts. And the results are the following: the steel mill, the cooking plant, the cement plants, and the price. And the results show that there is a problem in the distinguish from the steam plants and the cooking plants, and are not completely separated. And the cement plants are better distinguished, the recognized. And because the steel and the cooking plant have the similar production working procedures, so it's very difficult to distinguish. This is the large scale thermal anomaly retrieving method using the mirrors and so on. Then we move to the some detail. The fan scale. I will introduce one method based on the improved box plot method. You see, I have introduced to you the heat element intensity method. Even we study the urban heat element intensity, we have the different level. Also, here we use the different level. And then we study the use the different level the land heat element intensity level, and then we can study the classification of the natural fracture segments, and we can see the method in the 2018 the high temperature anomaly. The anomaly zone distribution. This is the spring, summer, autumn of the winter, and the spring high temperature anomaly are mainly distributed in the non-building area. Most of the high temperature anomaly in the summer, and the autumn are distributed in the residential and the industrial area. And the high temperature anomaly in winter, including the non-buildings area and the industrial area. In the high temperature anomaly area is treated in the spring, and in winter, the industrial area is less than in the summer and autumn. You can see from the picture. And then we have the criteria for the classification. Okay, here we have the low temperature zone, sub, medium, high, and ultra high, and we can study it, and we can see that the high temperature anomaly in the spring, and okay, the distributed area. Okay, okay. We use the box plot. Okay, this is the median, the lower quartile, the upper quartile, and the non-exception minimum, the mean outlier, the extreme outlier, and the liquid. Okay, then we use the box plot to see which what part is the median, what part is the high temperature, the extreme outlier. Okay, we use it. This is the thermal outlier, the normal value, and the cold outlier. Then the quartile. Quartile is the data as 25% and 75% respectively of the sorting the data site. And this is some explain to it, and we can calculate the quartile distance and the box body of the quartile, also known as the box plot, is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile, and this is a specific formula is as follow. And then we calculate the maximum and the minimum values, and the abnormal, not usually abnormal maximum, and the minimum value at the Q3 plus this. Okay, and in the absence of the abnormal value, these two values is the maximum and the minimum value of the data site, and this is the original box plot diagram. Then we improve the box plot with the 4 quartiles and also the 8 quartiles, and compare them. Then just like it, use the landside and the GF number 1 or 2, and we conduct such things, and extract the buildings and the land surface temperature retrieving, and to retrieve the abnormal area, and we conduct to judge is the plant factories or not, and select it. When the industrial area is in the working state, a large amount of the waste heat is emitted, and the surface temperature is generally high than the other area, for example, the residential area. So the color steel house in the study area is also in abnormal area of high temperature, is considered to be the industrial thermal pollution area. Therefore, we use the thermal infrared image to increase the temperature anomaly area, and then combine the buildings retrieving and the others. Okay, we use also some method using the Baidu or Google Earth image to determine by the manual interpretation the coordinate position information of the specific industrial heat pollution area is obtained and further validated by the Baidu or Google. And the other method, based on the result of the industrial heat pollution area retrieval, and 100 points were randomly selected, combined with the Google Earth image and the Baidu, and determine whether the sampling points are in the industrial area to validate the result. Okay, this is the improved Bose plot method, the half interquartile range and the Borel coefficient. The improved Bose plot method I have mentioned to you, just here, yes, the 4 quartile and 8 quartile, and this is the improved Bose applied Bose plot method, and to study it, we can see the smoothness is greater than 0, and the positive screw phenomenon, and the kurtosis is greater than 0, and the distribution is very steep. And then we can compare the results. Yes, use the Bose plot and the improved Bose plot method. We can see there are some mixed judgment, some mixed industrial areas in the Bose plot, whereas here is better. Okay, and then we can also study it with the heat element intensity, mean standard method, and the Bose plot, and the improved Bose plot. We can see that there are less mixed industrial points, and the shape is very good, and this one is have very good result. That to see, compared with the other 3 methods, the improved Bose plot method has 2 advantages, and the influence of the residential area can be reduced to a certain extent by using our method, which is mainly reflected in summer and autumn, and the residence areas extracted by the heat element intensity method and the mean standard deviation method exceed or sub-exceed the industrial area, whereas the improved Bose plot method and the box plot method result in the large the industrial area. And our method can avoid the false retrieving, and somehow it's good. Okay, then we retrieve the abnormal area of the high temperature. We have to use the industrial heat polluted area. Then what we can do? We not only use the infrared remote sensing data, but also we use the optical data. Okay, so we use it as a steel plant strip, illegal steel shots, males retrieving. We use the color steel hose intersection method. Because if it's the industrial zones, it's mainly color steel hose buildings. For example, the blue, the red color, gray color of the industrial area. That is, we can classify the thermal infrared images and the semantic map of the high temperature area and the semantic map of the color steel hose are used as a mask analysis, and the rest is industrial thermal pollution. And then we use the water mask method And when the thermal infrared image is classified, it's found over 19% of the highest temperature is industrial thermal pollution and water. Therefore, as long as the water area is extracted and be analyzed by the mask, the remaining high temperature area is the high thermal pollution. You can see this is the procedure. We use the high resolution thermal infrared image, also some optical data, GF number 1, number 2, ZY3, and the leakage, and we can have the natural factor classification, the DN, and the classification of the color steel room based on the Econition software. Then we can have the spatial overlaying, grading, and determine the threshold, and then get the industrial thermal pollution distribution map and carry out the validation. You can see this is the surface temperature classification, and this is used ZY3 data. Also, perhaps you can have the high resolution, for example, the GF number 2, which is the have the 0.48 resolution, and you can see where is the blue color steelhouse classification, and in the picture, the blue color steelhouse can be substantially retrieved, and the mist is very little. Among them, some gray-black holes are extracted also, and the accuracy is higher. And the red color steelhouse classification can also be retrieved. And in this picture, the red color steelhouse can be retrieved. It's easy to be confused with the bright red living roof, resulting a high rate of the wrong retrieving, and the overall accuracy of the retrieving can reach about the 83%, and we can decrease the red residential housing manual interactive investigation. I think somehow it's one questions of the classification, the different zoning area classification. We can use the optical satellite data, also combined with the infrared remote sensing data. Then we can increase the classification accuracy. And also we have the gray color steelhouse classification. We use GF number 1 data, and perhaps the gray compared with the blue and the red color steelhouse. The gray color steelhouse is the retrieving accuracy is poor comparatively. The shape of the retrieving is incomplete. It's easy to confuse with the gray residential housing and the cement pavements and the water and so on. So the mist retrieving rate is higher, and due to the small number, so we should combine with some technique of the urban gray, impervious surface, buildings retrieving, and using the method I introduced here. And also we conduct the water side mask method to mask the water side. Then to increase the industrial thermal pollution distribution and validation. And this is the result of the color steel hose, okay, interaction method. Okay, this is the result. You can see the color steel hose interaction method achieved comparatively good results, and also use the water mask, and both of the method can be completely automatic by the computer, and we can run it and improve the accuracy. This is the water mask retrieving result, and you can see some interesting result, and this is the accurate retrieving of the thermal pollution, and compared with the optical satellite data or the Baidu Google, you can see that there is the you can see show is the corresponding factories, and this is also the high temperature area, and also the right shows also the corresponding factories. Okay, this is the champion. Okay, and just like it, some results. Okay, some results of the different color factory rooms, and with the now perhaps we will have the high resolution thermal infrared data at night, and the temperature difference we can calculate accurately, and perhaps in the future we can use the spatial temporal fusion models, high resolution, high spatial LST's data set. We can study it, and the certain heat pollution we can retrieve and just like it. Also, there are some accurate right retrievals, and there are some uncertain things. Okay, and we should check on the high resolution optical images and some uncertain, and just like it. Perhaps it's also the factories. Okay, but there are some chimneys were found. Okay, now we finished the high temperature retrieving and the normal area of the high temperature, and we know where is the factory. Okay, then we should know what's the working conditions and the intensity monitoring. We can see it. How to determine the working situation or status of the working intensity of the important ground objects, such as the factories, by the remote sensing, infrared remote sensing, or using the optical data. Does it work? It's based on the long-term sequence surface temperature map. The density segmentation technique is used to classify the multi-temporal surface temperature, okay, after normalization. And we can divide it into the different level, just like the urban heat intensity level. And we can know where is the low temperature, where is the middle temperature, where is the higher temperature, and calculate the ratio of the area of the high temperature anomaly area to the area of the built area, and assign the different weight to characterize the thermal anomaly. When it indicates if it's working or it has a high working intensity. Okay, just like it. So we divide the monitoring objects into two categories: the typical area and the steel enterprise. Okay, and this is the production status or the non-working status, or the illegal factories or illegal industrial mills. It's run steadily. So we divide it into the production status and production status and suspected illegal factories. Okay, so we use it. This is the production status using the infrared remote sensing. Okay, this is the in Dainan iron and steel plant production status. Use it. And there is a large area of high temperature anomaly in the iron and steel enterprise and last a long time. And its surface temperature is greater than the outside in the surrounding area. And the steel plant is judged to be in the production. And this is the non-working state. And this is also the production status and non-working state. And we can judge it. This is the suspended illegal factories. Okay, this is we get the high temperature and we check it's obvious it's the factory. But when we check if it's in the government list, if it's not, it's illegal. Okay, so this is the intensity of the working and use the different level and to calculate the proportion of the area in the high temperature areas. So this is some retrieving result, the different level, and we also develop some comparative indicators. Okay, you see, we can use the thermal CS value for the steel mills. We use the temperature of the factory and the other area temperature. Okay, and I is the thermal stress value. T factory is the average surface temperature of the steel plant and the other area. And also use the proportion of the high temperature zone for the steel plant. And we average and the thermal anomaly determination and the proportion of the high temperature and the something like it, the outer layer. And then we use the method for monitoring the production capacity reduction in steel plant based on the remote sensing of the surface temperature. And the index 1 is the abnormal high temperature intensity value, the difference between the average temperature of the area and the steel plant area and the background temperature, the average temperature of the non-steel plant area, which is the basic characteristics quantity indicating the thermal environment of the target steel plant in different periods. And the index 2 is for the proportion. The target features in the area of the surface temperature is greater than the city average surface temperature, and the ratio of the area of the target object set up the suitable for the small scale thermal environment monitoring and the analysis of the quantitative indicators. So we use it in the Wuhan Iron and Steel Group Corporation and to study it. And we get the very good result. And these research achievements have been published in the environment, the International Journal of Environment Pollution. And also, we use the landside image and we analysis. And we also considered why should the natural factors affect the land surface temperature. I have exclude the natural factors. For example, the remote sensing data samples are unevenly distributed in each year and quarter, and different season are in different the natural conditions such as the climate must be different. So there is a large error in the direct analysis of the land surface temperature for uncontrolled variable. So we use the difference between the surface temperature of each period minus the average temperature of the water body in the corresponding period as the thermal environment comparison index of the steel plant in different period. Among them, the average temperature of the water body in the city in the same period is a typical parameter of the land surface temperature under the influence of the natural factors. Okay, and then we use it after removing the natural factors, removing the water temperatures. Okay, the surface temperature for the plant area after removing the natural factors. We study the different periods. Okay, and we can know what the change, the thermal environment change analysis. Okay, then we can know what's the plant is likely to be produced during the peak season in March and the September, and if it's decreased the production, and determine the effect of the exclude natural factors on the factors LST, and to reflect the results of the implementation of the capacity reduction policy. And you see this also to this area and this factory and to this area was very lost this year, issued a statement that command to reduce the capacity by this amount tons. Okay, and we can monitor it. And also we can analyze the production status change in the long-term series steel plant. After removing the effect of the natural factors on the LST, a multi-temporal comparative analysis is performed on the surface temperature intervals of the steel plants, and the change in the surface temperature is used to map the change in the production intensity of the steel plant. You can see it, okay, and the factory temperature zone and the urban temperature zone. And these studies calculated the two quantitative indicators I have introduced to you, and to characterize the changes in the thermal environment of the steel plants and map the changes in the thermal anomalies intensity. And then we can study the quantitatively assessment the production intensity. Okay, from this year to this year, the production intensity of the steel plant has shown a downward trend, and basically decide it's in the process of the reduction of the production. Okay, and just like it can be used And now I will give you some application response. This is Tianjin Iron and Steel Group Corporation company. This is the different phases in the workshop of Tianjin. And this is the land site and the high resolution. And you can see the thermal environment analysis using the surface temperature of the different time. And the surface temperature will be normalized. Then the temperature grading distribution, okay, and the different time. And why here the temperature of the water is much higher than the surrounding river, okay. Then we check. It's here is a working condition determination. And the Tianjin Rongcheng invested so much money in 2008 to build a large sewage treatment plant with a daily treatment capacity and realize the zero discharge of water recycling. So it not only treats the product, the waste water of the factory, but also treat the urban domestic waste water. So it's more high temperature. Okay. Also, okay. We can also judge the working status of the Hubei area and steel plant. And this is the different phases, different studies. And we can judge the working status of the Hubei plant, okay, without validation and evaluation. And to judge where is the illegal factories. Yes, this is the results you can see. And this is also another Taizhou Dainantong stainless steel industrial working conditions. Yeah, you can see this is the some pictures. This is the different phases of the Taizhou Dainantong stainless steel industrial, and demonstrate the different area. Then we can know the multi-temporal high temperature distribution map and the total 258 thermal anomaly area in the Dainantong. Only the town was extracted. And through the Baidu and Google validation, and about 200 high temperature anomaly area was confirmed to be the factory area. And you can see the like it. Okay, we can check the validation. And we can, based on such a technique, we can select where is the legal and where is the working status and where is the illegal factories. And according to the statistic and study, there are more than 1,000 industrial enterprise in the Dainantong, mainly in the stainless steel factory industry. And the results are reliable. This is the coordinates, okay, longitude, latitude, and we report it to the relative government division and let them. Then I will introduce, we have studied introduced some technique how to monitoring retrieve the high temperature, how to recognize the industrial area, what's the working conditions, and then we should sum up them. So we developed a special temporal modeling of the industrial heat island effect? Is there an industrial heat island effect? What are the driving factors? What's the contribution level of each factors? How the local climate, land cover caps, and anthropogenic heat emission influence the spatial pattern of the land surface temperature in the industrial heat island region at a fine scale. You see, from the urban agglomeration to the city scale to the city inner scale to the function area. For example, the factory, industrial, mill. Okay, and with from the large scale to the finer scale, and the leading driving factors leading to the island intensity, okay, effect are all known. So we try to reveal the leading driving factors of the industrial heat island effect and explore the relative contribution of the different influencing factors will help us to understand the mechanism of the urban microclimate and provide the practical guidance for the formulation of the fine-scale urban heat island effect mitigation and control. So we conduct the spatial temporal analysis of the industrial heat island effect. We have the Wuhan Industrial Park and something like it. And also the comparative method of the industrial heat island effect was put forward. Okay, and try to study the spatial temporal variation characteristics and the causes of the industrial heat island effects. We use the many satellites data, Landsat data, the Sumin NPP Virs daily production data, and the LCZ data, local climate zoning data, and the land cover impervious data. Okay, also this includes the anthropogenic heat emission and the heat island intensity calculation, and so on. So the surface temperature distribution map shows that the industry park shows a higher temperature level in the city. And we have known that the research fully revealed the phenomenon of the high temperature aggregation in the industrial land, but we don't know the temperature difference between the influence area and the other different reference area cannot be directly interpreted visually. And we know that in the urban area, the higher the density of the impervious surface, the stronger the urban heat island effect in the daytime. Unknown whether the warming effect within the industrial park is significantly higher than this generally applicable relationship at the city scale. So we create an asymmetric continuous buffer and can calculate the average temperature by layer and fit the surface temperature profile. Then we put forward a curve. You see, this is the land surface temperature. This is the difference to the edge of the factory, the industrial park. Then the temperature of the industrial park edge, the turning temperature, and so on. You can see this is the slope, okay? use the slope distance from the first turn point of the land surface profile to the edge of the industrial park. Okay, the distance. Okay, L max, and the effect of the amplitude dt max, and this is the dt max. The difference between the LSD as the first turning point of the LSD profile and the LSD as the boundary of the park, and also the effect of the gradients, the GT, okay, which is the average effect per unit distance. That is the warming amplitude. Okay, the like it. Then we have the hypothesis. The temperature difference, the decreasing trend between the industrial park and the surveying area is the criteria to determine whether the industrial heat island effect exists. Whether the industrial heat island effect exists. And then step 3, we use the heat island intensity index based on the different reference region. LCZ, the low vegetation area, were taken as a reference area. Okay, and also the natural agriculture land, water body, or artificial urban green surface build up impervious surface in the city are taken as the reference area. So we keep on our studies. This is the low plant LCZ. Use this, okay, and also the use this the like farmland, the build up, the water, the impervious, and then we can consider the industrial heat island intensity measurement for complex the environment background. The 5-kilometer buffer zone around the industrial park were taken as a reference area also. Also, we studied the summer and the winter. Okay, the different season response. And this study defined the industrial heat island intensity, IHII, as the surface temperature difference of the industrial park and its surroundings. That is the LST core, and the minus the LST the background. Then we get the IHII. Okay, then we study it. Okay, the box plot of the land surface temperature. The red represents the industrial park. The green represents the natural land surface. The gray represent the man-made, the artificial land surface. That is the urban green, and that is to say the average surface temperature of the industrial park is about 2 centigrade higher than that of the impervious surface, and the maximum temperature difference can reach 3.77 centigrade. So we can study the different park. Okay, the surface temperature profile, and all the industrial parks show a significant trend of the land surface temperature decline within about 4 kilometers of their surrounding area. Okay, the result of the multi-space case study confirms that large industrial parks generate sub-heat island effect within the cities, which is we proved the industrial heat island effect. Then we conduct the land surface temperature classification and the thermal land surface pattern index based on the thermal anomaly threshold, just like this, the different level. Okay, and the construction, the thermal landscape pattern index based on the land surface temperature grade. Last yesterday, I introduced landscape indicators. Okay, in the urban green space remote sensing. Here we also use the thermal landscape patterns index to study it. Okay, and the different level, and we can study it. The summer. Okay, the thermal landscape patch are relatively fragmented, and the winter, okay, which is relatively concentrated, and the industrial heat island effect, the intensification in summer and spring, but low intensity in the autumn and the winter, and also the characteristics of the thermal landscape pattern, the degree of the thermal landscape fragmentation was higher in September and December, and lower in spring, and which has opposite seasonal variation. So I just to show you how to study it in the turn of mind, how to analyze this from what perspective, from what aspects. Okay. Also, we studied the driving effect of the land surface temperature, which has a seasonal and a scale effect. At the fan scale, the PD value of the net light was the highest in the different seasons, especially in the spring, in summer, and indicating that the dominant driving effect of the anthropogenic heat emission on land surface temperature in the industrial heat island region. Now we have also especially studied the anthropogenic heat island, and also at the urban scale, the environmental factors, LCZs, and the land covers determine the more spatial variation of the land surface temperature, whereas the anthropogenic heat emission has a weak impact. Okay, and then the multi-factor driving effect of the urban land surface temperature has significantly temporal seasonal variation and spatial scale difference. So we should study it. Let's draw the conclusion of this part. An effective method to quantify the warming effect of the industrial parks is constructed, and the new evidence is provided for the subheat island effect within cities through the spatial temporal demonstration, which is defined or first put forward by us as the industrial heat island effect, and a thermal landscape pattern measurements index for the extreme heat area within the city is proposed. We taking the industrial heat island region as an example, and the spatial temporal characteristics of the industrial heat island effect are summarized, and the significant influence of the anthropogenic heat emission on land surface temperature in industrial area is revealed, and the seasonal variation of the multi-factors driving effects and the differences at the different space scale are discussed. So we from the urban heat island of the different scales to the industrial heat island effect analysis. We finished it. And in conclusion, the study provided a technical method for the modeling and assessment of the fan-scale urban subheat island effects, which is of great significance for the urban microclimate research and the environment planning. And the heat island effect is strong in spring and summer, weak in autumn and winter. And for more information, you can check this paper. We published it in the environment pollution. There is a very detailed description. And the last part, I will introduce the mitigation effect of the industrial relocation and the urban heat. You know, the urban pollution have result in serious environment quality with the rapid growth of the urbanization. So the Shougang Group is one of the largest operator of the steel mill in China, and which the approval from the State Council, the Shougang Group moved from Beijing beginning in 2005 and finish the production at 2010. And now it's reconstructed as a new industrial park. And also we use the URI to study it. And you can see from the 2000 to 2005, the high temperature zone and the of the Shougang industry area. Okay, from here to here, and it's increased here, and the regional proportion increased from the about the 40% to the 63%, and the urban heat island ratio index URI was 0.34 in 2000 and the 0.55 in 2005. After it's stopped. Some factories stopped the production, and until here, it's finished the production. And in this year, its temperature level fall and the level fell decreased by almost 20% points compared with this year. Okay, and the URI, the urban heat ratio index, dropped from the 0.55 to 0.36. And here, okay, after the location of the Shougang, and you can see the 5 years, okay, the first furnace and the second coke furnace was sustained in 2007, and the 2 converter at the 4th blast furnace and the 3rd steel making plant was stopped in 2007, and it's changed a lot. And okay, there are some details you can in the 2016s. The surface temperature level has been significantly reduced. The original high temperature, okay, zone and the entire plant area has slumped significantly, decreased, accounting for only now the high temperature accounting for only 0.86%. After location of the Shougang, the area of the heat island decreased significantly, and the URI, the urban heat ratio index, was 0.36 0.6 in 2010 and 0.21 in 2006. And you can see, and the area of the original red tone high temperature region has dropped to 4 levels. During these 16 years, the development, the relocation, the transformation of the Shogun zone has a great impact on the urban heat island effect. You can see the 11 years, a general decrease of the urban heat island can be found as the green patches representing the decrease of temperature area are larger. Okay, and the area of the high temperature level 4, level 5 decreased by 63% to 26%. Okay, and the impact of the location of the Shogun zone on the heat island in the surrounding area cannot be ignored. In this year, the surrounding area, the Yongding River, the green low-level temperature and are increased significantly. So the ecological benefit is very great. Also, we can, if we have the production data, we can analyze the correlation between the surface temperature grading level and the production forecasting. And this is some regression analysis. And even though it's not very profound because of the limitation of the production data, but more work can be done based on it. So the spatial and the temporal surface urban heat island analysis indicate that the location and the restriction of the industrial area can mitigate the thermal pollution. And I think the infrared remote sensing, the urban heat space remote sensing is very important also. If you are interested in it, you can conduct more work. And it's also a very important research field in the urban land surface environment remote sensing. Okay, by the 2 morning, I have introduced to you the urban green space remote sensing and the urban heat remote sensing space remote sensing. We can say that with the rapid development of the industrialization and the urbanization, there are more and more role and more space for us to put forward the urban land surface environment remote sensing. We can use the urban green space remote sensing. We can study the urban heat or urban gray remote sensing. And I think the research discipline can develop by and by. And I hope more and more people can join it. And I think the things can be applied in many fields. For example, the environmental protection, the disaster mitigation, the housing construction, the agriculture, even forest, and so on.